Hey, this is Heather from the Renaissance English History Podcast, and this is your Tudor Minute for July the 15th. Today we mark the birthday in 1573 of architect Inigo Jones. I have a really hard time saying his name without laughing because it reminds me of Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride, and I want to do the whole "you killed my father, prepare to die" shtick. But I digress. Inigo Jones was actually the first British architect of the early modern period. Despite his Spanish-sounding name, he was thoroughly English, born in Smithfield in London, the son of a Welsh clothmaker. He never went to college, he was self-taught. He traveled abroad around 1600, where he was hugely influenced by the Roman and Greek columns in Italy, and he brought that back to England. He rose quickly through the ranks, he became the surveyor for the Prince of Wales, and eventually became surveyor general to the Office of Works, where he was involved in a number of large-scale building projects. His work wasn't particularly original, much of it looks pretty generic to us, but he's well known and respected because he brought classical architecture to Gothic England. One of his most famous commissions was Queen's House in Greenwich, which, though it looks plain, it caused a sensation when it was built because it was so different than anything else in England. He also built the Banqueting House, which is the only surviving building that was part of the Grand Whitehall Palace. Jones is also famous for working in the theater, designing sets, scenery, and costumes for plays and masks, often in collaboration with the poet Ben Jonson. By the 1630s, he was in high demand, and since he was still the surveyor to the king, his services were only available to a very select group of people. Towards the end of his life, he was caught up in the English Civil War because of his close association with the royal family. His property was seized, so it was returned a year later, and he lived his final years fairly quietly. The famous Christopher Wren was surveyor general several years after him and built a monument to him, which was sadly destroyed in the Great Fire of London in 1666. That's your Tudor Minute for today. Remember, you can dive deeper into life in 16th century England through the Renaissance English History Podcast at englandcast.com.